Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're going to get started. Welcome. My name is Margot Parmenter. I'm the events coordinator at the Hub City Bookshop in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We're so excited to have everyone join us tonight to hear from Anna Lynn Thomas, author of the new essay collection, I'm Not Ready for This. Everybody just calm down and give me a minute, which honestly sounds like it could be the motto of my life and so many other
Yes.
people's lives.
Yes.
Before I hand it over to Anna to tell us all about her book, I just want to introduce our bookshop to anyone in the audience who might be new here. The Hub City Bookshop is a full-service independent bookstore that serves the literary community of upstate South Carolina. We're part of the larger organization of the Hub City Writers Project, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to cultivate readers and nurture writers. We do that by publishing original titles through our press, as well as by sponsoring literary programming in our community, including writers' workshops, book clubs, and author events like this one. If you want to find out more about us, our organization, or any of our upcoming events, please head to hubcity.org and sign up for our newsletter. Also, if you have not yet purchased your copy of Anna's book, this is my pre-order copy. That is my well-loved copy, but we have beautiful new copies here in the shop. Please head to the bottom of your screen and use the Buy the Book link. Click the bottom of your screen and you can buy the book through us. You can also pre-order it to pick up here in the store. Buying from Hub City is the best way to support the Writers Project and your local bookstore. Okay, that's right. Enough from me. I'm going to introduce our author and let us tell her about her book. Anna Lynn Thomas is a humor writer and popular online personality who founded the funny site Ha-Has for Hoo-Has. She spends her time writing for various media outlets and hosting her podcast, It's Not That Serious, which is consistently ranked in the top 25 of the iTunes family section. She holds a bachelor's in advertising and a master's in communication studies and spent many years copywriting and creating campaigns in ad departments before having children. Her story about a fart went viral and catapulted her to fame or infamy. Yeah. Anna and her husband Rob live in Nebraska with their two young daughters, Lucy and Poppy, and an English bulldog named Bruno. You can learn more at annalynnthomas.com. Anna, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today and share with you this crazy book. I'm Not Ready for This. This is Christy. She won a signed copy. That's why that says that right there. Should have took that out. So my name is Anna Lynn Thomas, and that introduction really kind of sums it up. My whole life, I've wanted to be an author ever since I was a little girl. And in a lot of ways, I felt it's kind of been a calling in my life. And so many years ago, I started to create a platform, right? If you're going to be a writer, you need to create a platform. And so I started this website for women called Ha-Has for Hoo-Has, which is ridiculous. I didn't realize how awkward it would be.
Title for
Yeah, I didn't realize though how awkward it would be, like when grandmas would ask you what you do, right? And you're like, well, I created a website for women. They're like, what's it called, sweetheart? And you're like, well, Ha-Has for Hoo-Has, Dorothy. I'm sorry, it's inappropriate. But yeah, so I wrote I wrote on there for a while, and with no followers, I wrote this essay about farting on a date with my husband. It was our first date, and it went crazy viral. Unbelievably, hundreds of millions of people, I think, have read that story. It must be relatable. And I would say, I don't know if I would prefer to be known for, a fart story. I don't think I'm a potty humor person. Is that the essay I would have chosen for the masses to read? Probably not. But that's what was picked by everybody, I guess, as their favorite. So that is what actually helped me to kind of catapult my platform and kind of get everything going, which led to my books. So I just came out with We'll Laugh About This Someday, just came out in September. And then my publisher, there's a real funny thing about funny authors is that if you've made somebody laugh, they get very anxious for another book. And so they didn't want people to wait very long to have a second book. So this just came out a couple weeks ago. I'm not ready for this. I actually, both books are absolutely hilarious, but this one has a real special place in my heart because I think the first book is some of my most craziest stories, whereas the second book is really just getting into the nuances of life, the thing that all of us really relate to, right? And I wanted to call the book I'm Not Ready for This, or I'm Not Ready to Go Sleeveless, is what I actually pitched the book to be. And my editor thought that was like a little too, she was like, I don't know if I know what that means. I was like, you know why? Because you're skinny. That's why you don't know what that means. Because to me, like that is such a metaphor for my life is how every year, the first day it gets really hot after spring, I'm taken by surprise. Like I didn't think it was coming or something. You know what I mean? And I've got all of these cardigans hanging up in my closet and now and a hoodies. And now it's too hot for those. And I've got to show my bat wings to the world. Okay. I've had since January 1st to get it together. Of course not, because I'm not getting it together. My arms look like that. You know when you like if you've ever made bread and it's on its second rise, it's like that white, fluffy, rising, proofing bread. That's what my arms look like. I'm not ready. I need 2 weeks, at least 2 to 3 more weeks. I always need more time. I never ever feel like I'm ready. And I know that that is what so many of us deal with in our lives. I don't think really any of us are ready for anything. I don't know if I was ready for this. I was talking to my assistant Amber. I was like, wait, what am I saying? What am I doing? She was like, do what you did 2 weeks ago. I was like, does that convert when you're online? I mean, I'm never, ever ready. And so I thought I might do like a little reading of the introduction because I think it really sets the tone for how the book is. When I was writing my master's thesis, I got into an explosive fight with my thesis chair. That may seem odd, the thought of a student and professor in a professional setting going at it over how to measure cognitive dissonance. But there we were, like a couple of unhinged weirdos. I burst into tears unexpectedly, then quickly tried to reel myself in. My tears laid my vulnerability bare, and my professor's shoulders slowly lowered from her ears. She softened, and we reconciled. When it was time to leave, she gave me a hug, and as I leaned in, the unspeakable happened. For reasons I'll never understand, I whispered softly in her ear, I love you. Okay. This is one of the most horrific things to ever happen to me, you guys. I don't know why I said it. I don't know what I was thinking. It just came out. I was vulnerable. It was an intimate embrace. Okay. The very second it left my lips, I knew I had no choice but to drop out of school, glue on a beard, move to a quiet town, and hide under an ambiguous name like Pat Stevens. I mean, was I nuts? I respected her, sure, but she could be a real piece of work. Brilliant, unrelenting in her demands for excellence, and terrifying for no good reason. To say I loved her was a real stretch. The cringe ran so deep and hard it kinked my neck and my limbs froze to ice. She said nothing in return, just patted my back politely and then watched me leave her office, my neck kinked at a 90-degree angle, limping rigid like an ice sculpture. To say I wasn't ready to return to class the next day is an understatement. How could I look her in the eye again? But I somehow managed, detached and bubbly as if that erased the cringe from existence. It worked well enough, I guess. With her guidance, I eventually went on to write a thesis worthy of awards. Now that I think of it, I've never been ready for anything. I've tried to recall a time when I've walked into any situation prepared academically, emotionally, spiritually, or physically. Nothing comes to mind. Adult decisions, marriage, conflict, parenting, crow's feet, large pores, skinny jeans, hosting a dinner party, you name it, I'm not ready for it. By the way, I am never ready for a dinner party. I hosted Memorial Day. I was up till 10 o'clock at night cleaning. Okay? And we were just going to grill hot dogs.
It's
I'm
so
never
much
ready.
more work than you think it's going to be.
And then I zero in on, I'm like, look at these baseboards. Look at these baseboards. They are filthy. I can't have people in my house with these filthy baseboards. It's ridiculous. In fact, I'll have to say, my dog, I have an elderly English bulldog. If I do these three things, if I look like a hobo, I mean, if I'm just a hot mess, okay, just hair up, frizzy, no makeup on, and I'm like busy, like I'm just walking quickly all over the house, throwing things away, and I start yelling at people. So I'm like, whose is this? Pick that up. This is not an exaggeration. He runs to the door and barks because he knows that people are coming over. That's how sick it is. And so like predictable of how I behave. Okay. I've never, not once, been ready to go sleeveless or for my monthly period to arrive, even though my iWatch gives me several warnings. Okay, this one is ridiculous. Every year I've been having my period since I was 12, and yet every single month, it's like I get my iWatch is like, "Hi, your period should start today." I'm like, "Swipe." I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. Then it starts a few hours later, and I'm like, "What? I've got a busy day today. I'm wearing white jeans, and I never wear white jeans." I'm telling you, I'm not ready for anything, including my period. It's a nightmare. Oh, I wasn't ready for my daughter to start kindergarten. That's the truth. It was February. My friend was like, "Have you registered your daughter for kindergarten yet?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? It's February." She's like, "Well, this is when you start registering." I'm like, "Where? Kindergarten.com? What is this?" Never ready. Got a whole chapter on that one. And I have to say, my chapter is called First Day. I love all of my chapters, but that one wasn't really my favorite, the one that I was most excited for people to read. It has gotten the most feedback. I don't think anybody is ready for their child to start kindergarten. They're like supply list, they're confused, they don't know where to get it. They don't know, you know what I mean? There's just something about it. I feel like we're all left out. Our kids have Spirit Week. We're the last to know. They need crazy socks. We're at Target at clothes trying to find crazy socks. And that's when you find out Target doesn't have crazy socks. They have cute socks. Anyway, don't get me started. I could go on and on. Okay. I appeared on national TV in a blazer 2 sizes too small because I thought I'd lose 20 pounds before the shoot. Okay, no, of course I'm not. When am I going to just accept myself? You are not going to lose 20 pounds before this thing. What are you, crazy? You love toast. Okay, it ain't going to happen. But somehow, miraculously, God finds a way to push me forward. Feels super rude, to be honest, as I kick and scream, weep and breathe into a paper sack. But the more I'm pushed, the more I've had to rely on God for a miracle. A reminder that I can accomplish anything I set my mind to while simultaneously recognizing I can't accomplish anything at all. Every huge moment of my life, something has given me a push. In fact, I probably wouldn't be alive today if I wasn't literally violently pushed. So for the rest of the introduction, I share a story of my mom when I was I went to this, we lived out in the country. I went to this 3-room schoolhouse. It was very little house on the prairie, but not really. It was really just a small school with limited resources. It wasn't as quite as quaint as it sounds. But I went to this schoolhouse, and there was one particular day where she had this sense that I was in danger. And so instead of letting me walk home with my friends, she drove to school to pick me up. And right as she went to pick me up, she noticed that there was a car that was about to hit me, and my mom jumped out of the car and pushed me out of the way, and it hit my mom instead. And so I use that as a little bit of a metaphor of being pushed by something into our next seasons, into our next obstacles, into our next lessons, into our next stages of growth. And we're usually completely unaware, like, what the heck is this? Or we're kicking and screaming all the way in. And so I use this book and the stories in it to really just talk about all of the things that I haven't been ready for, using self-deprecating humor to just completely make fun of myself all the way through, but then hopefully be someone that everyone can relate to. Like, I am not the only one who has had to go through this. and hopefully encourage folks that, don't resist it. Just go for it, So, um, there's some chapters here I could read. If you have any questions, just let me know, but I can go ahead and share some stories in here too.
Yeah, I would love if you shared a few of the stories for people in the audience who haven't gotten a chance to read, because I
Yeah.
read all of them, so I know the stories. So
Okay,
maybe
good.
you choice kind of anecdotes that give people an idea of all this stuff that's covered. That would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first chapter, Only God is Perfect, is essentially about not being ready for an injury, which who is, right? You're never like, wow, this was the perfect time to get the flu. I had nothing to do for a week. Thank God. My kids are off at grandma's house all week. This was perfect timing. I mean, we're never ready to get your back out. Every time my back goes out, it couldn't be the worst time ever, right? And so I have this slippery ankle from a serious injury. It wasn't serious. I wish it was serious. I wish that I was like saving somebody from a burning building when it happened, but I was just running and like slapped my knee over and really hurt it pretty badly. And it's made it a slippery ankle ever since. Whereas if I ever roll my ankle, it's always that one. And I start with this story of my mom and I, for my first book, we'll laugh about this someday. It was in its second pass, and what that means is that your editor, publisher, wants you to read through it one last time before it goes to print, and that's the last call. If you have any changes, if you want to change a name, anything, is that last time. So I decided that I was going to print it all out on the good paper. I was going to get some good paper, and I was going to print a copy for myself instead of reading it online, which is so sterile. I wanted to get a printout from my mom and a printout from me, and we were just going to lick our fingers and just enjoy ourselves. Okay, because this is my first book, and I was gonna treat myself. Well, then I found out that printing it out on the good paper, 300 pages, was like $40. So I was like, you know what, Mom, we're gonna share it, okay? Because that's pricey. So my mom and I go to Kinko's. We run errands. I get the box. Okay, it's like this big, 300 pages. And I'm starting to walk outside and I see my mom in my car. And she's a real tiny, petite Italian Sicilian woman. And in my SUV, she looks like a tiny little nugget, okay? And she's like a prairie dog. And she's just like, I can see her like looking out the window and then she's kind of hiding again and I can't see her. Then she's kind of poking out, looking out again, and then she disappears. And I'm like, what in the world is she doing? And as I start to get the giggles, I step off the curb that I don't even think, in my defense, the sidewalk was not up to code. This thing was like this big. I did not expect it to be so short, but I stepped right off of it, cracked my ankle, skidded my left knee across the pavement, and I threw all the papers up. And I just disappeared into like paper smoke. It was like a magician trick, like I was like, voila, and I just disappear. All 300 pages go into the air and it had just rained. So all of the papers are flying around. They're going into puddles. I'm covered now in mud and my knee, I still have the scar to this day. Blood was coming down my leg. And I'm the type of person where if I fall, I am so embarrassed that I don't want any attention. You can laugh at me. Let's laugh about it. Even if it's broken, I'd rather you laugh. You can't feel sorry for me. Okay. That just makes it worse. We have to pretend it didn't happen. We have to like laugh about it and move on. But it hurts so bad that I kind of I call it like going into my like Nancy Kerrigan. You guys remember Nancy Kerrigan when she gets clubbed in the knees by Tanya Harding? Okay, or well, maybe not Tanya Harding. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. And I go to like look for my mom for her to help me because my papers are flying around all over this parking lot. And she's not even like looking. She's just kind of like looking off the other way. I'm like, oh my God. Mom! Mom! I can't believe this. Mom! Hello? Mom! Okay. Finally, she looks over and she sees me. She's like, "Oh, Anna, oh no, oh, how could this happen?" She starts running around, picking up all of these pages. A good Samaritan comes by and he's like, "Oh no." And so he starts picking up the pages. They're wet, they're in puddles, they're covered in mud. And I'm just like, "You guys forget it. Just forget it. Okay? Let's just go home. I'm not going to like what are we going to do with this muddy paper now? Let's just leave." My mom's like, "Honey, honey, honey, what if you go back inside? I bet she saw you fall and ask her to print you out another copy for free." I was like I'm 5 years old and I dropped my ice cream cone? I don't think so. Could you imagine me going back in there? I'm like dragging my leg. Okay. I look like I literally fell into a sewer and now I'm bleeding. She just saw me. Now I'm bloody. I'm dragging my leg. I'm like, "Hi. I don't know if you saw me really bite it out there off the curb. I know, yeah, it hurt real bad. Think I might have broke it. Hey, say, listen, do you think you could print me that out again for free?" "Yeah, no, you can keep your $40. I ain't doing that." So she picked it all up and they finally got all the pages together and we went home and I was in so much pain and I was like, "Oh, Mom, it was the good paper too." And she was like, "Oh, honey, I think it's just a reminder that only God is perfect." So that's the funny tidbit of that one. I will say that the feedback I have is that this chapter I go into a lot of my dad's falls, which my dad has some epic falls. And that is actually, people say that they laugh the hardest at that part. So I think everybody would really love that chapter.
Paul, I loved the pogo stick. And
yes. My dad's on a pogo stick, okay? And he bought it for the grandkids. We're all at this big park. We're under this pavilion. And he's like, "Move away, children. Let me show you how it's done." And he starts pogo sticking. And at first it's kind of going pretty well. And then he starts to get higher and higher. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever been to like a Sky Zone or those like trampoline parks, because this has happened to me where you're bouncing and it's really fun, but then all of a sudden it starts to get to that level of high where you're like, "Wait a minute. Uh-oh, this is really high. I'm actually really scared," right? And you start to see his demeanor change and he starts to kind of he starts to go into this big circle, right? And so we're screaming at him like, "Dad, stop. This is dangerous. What are you doing?" And he's got terror in his eyes. I mean, the man doesn't know what to do. I mean, I don't even know how you slow down a pogo stick. How do you get off one when it's lost control? I don't know. So he's bouncing. Finally, he bounces and literally leaps off and goes over these picnic tables. And my whole family, we're like a school of fish. We scream and we all like run over to where he is because I'm thinking broken hips, death. I don't know what happened to him. Hilarious. So he really put us through the ringer on that one. But yeah. Another one of my favorite chapters is Catherine O'Hara. It's my chapter on aging and not being ready for aging. And I know that anybody who's like over 40, because I'm 40 years old, is like, "Oh, please stop, you're a puppy." But I'm telling you, 40 is when you start to notice that you're like on the top of the hill and you're about making your way over, right? And you start to go down. And so that can be really shocking to you. So I remember the first time I was just kind of like, I was in my car and I was just feeling around and I was like, "What is this on my chin? What is this?" And then I look into the mirror. It was like a hair this long. How I didn't notice, I don't know. Okay. I immediately have to go home and I've got to pluck it. Google that. That's the first sign of decline. That's the first sign that your body is going through decay. Okay. So that was an unwelcome. I was not excited about that. But the first time I ever got really shocked about aging is when I was watching Home Alone. Catherine O'Hara is a genius in everything she does. She's making me laugh so hard in that scene where she's like, "Hello, hello, hello," and like hangs up on the guy at the French airport. And I wonder how old Catherine O'Hara is, because Schitt's Creek was like really taking off. And I was like, I wonder how old she is in this movie. And I'm thinking like 40, mid 40s, not because of how she looks, she's beautiful, but just because I remember her as a child, and she was a matriarch, and I'm not a matriarch. I don't, so obviously she's older than me. And I look it up and I discover by doing a little math that she was 36. Wait, 36? 36 in that movie. And at the time, I was 37. I went into a spiral. I was like, this cannot be. There is no way I am old enough to be the matriarch of a wealthy family who flies to France for Christmas, number one. There is no way I'm old enough to have a teenager named Buzz, especially if you have kids later. I had my kids in like my mid to late 30s. And so when you have your kids in your mid to late 30s, if you have a friend who had a child in their early 20s and they're like, well, so-and-so's off to college, you're like, no, no. I mean, it just doesn't even make sense. So I go down this rabbit hole where I start kind of Googling, like, well, how old was Meg Ryan and You've Got Mail? Okay, my age. I was like, oh, so I'm old enough to own a bookstore in New York? Is that what you're telling me? No, absolutely not. I still think I'm a baby. I still think that I'm like just fresh out of college. I have no concept of being older. And then Tom Hanks, I Googled him. He's 40. Now, very handsome. Tom Hanks is very handsome. But I don't know if you guys saw Tom Hanks's neck in that movie. It's like 3 hot dog buns stacked on top of each other. Okay. 40 is the age where necks start to go bad. And I was like, Lord, save me from this. Save me. It's true. 40 is when you start to lose that thing, the strength of your neck. I don't know.
Elasticity.
Yes. And you get cords. See these cords? Google it. No, don't Google it. You'll be depressed.
It's very smooth.
No. These cords right here is the first sign of decay. I Googled it, which was a huge mistake. It's the nightmare. Okay. So Tom Hanks, I'm the age where necks go bad. So I have this scene and my sister, I told her that I wrote about this in the book. And she's like, yeah, you can use whatever you want. I go, okay, because I'm going to tell them about the vaginal dryness discussion. She's like, yeah, it's fine. She gets the book. She's like, you told everybody about the vaginal dryness? I was like, this is new to you. I'm telling you, she's always like that though. She's like, yeah, do whatever you want. And then I do. And she's like, what? She's not paying attention. She has 8 kids. My sister is 50 and has 8 kids. So she's barely there. She's barely holding on. It's just, so let me see if I can find that part. So this part's the most hilarious because it's the truth and it's terrifying to be getting older. Another thing that I even mentioned is that I've had this nose ring since I was 21. It's moved. How depressing is that? My nose ring is moved. I also noticed, now granted, I've been married to my husband for a very long time, so the making out is, not happening often. But one time we had a really good kiss, and I noticed that my nose was smearing across his in a way that I didn't remember. My nose is already, I thought you had to be 80 to have like your nose be significantly bigger. No, just 40. Nose rings moved, smearing it across my husband's face. This is depressing. Okay. My sister Jenny is 10. This is Catherine O'Hara. My sister Jenny's 10 years older than me and approaching 50. She looks incredible, of course, but she's noticed her cycle changing, causing some imbalances and issues. We were setting up for the equipment for our YouTube baking show, Jenny and Anna Bake, which she told me all about it. I brought up some of the symptoms I've been having in my Facebook group, and that was a huge mistake, she said, plugging in the light box. It was just one horror story after another from a bunch of miserable premenopausal women, and I just absolutely refused to go down like that. What kind of stories? I asked, mincing the garlic. Hot flashes, weight gain, stuff like that? Vaginal dryness. Vaginal dryness? You heard me. So when they walk, it's just a bunch of friction? Kindling catching fire in their pants? I stopped mincing and cocked my head concerned. Sore, itchy, painful sex, urinary tract infections? It absolutely will not happen to me, she said, passing me an onion to chop. Well, how can you prevent it? I asked. I was desperate for any and all knowledge that would help me navigate these pitfalls. turmeric, collagen, vitamin D, rebuke it. Listen, my sister's not crazy. This is the craziest thing she's ever said. Okay. Okay. Rebuke it? Yes, I rebuke it in the name of Jesus. You're rebuking vaginal dryness in the name of Jesus? Yes, I am. Every morning in my prayer closet. She pulled out her Dutch oven and put it on the stove. Wait, I said, setting down my chef's knife. Every morning, you wake up, go into a closet, shut the door, and rebuke vaginal dryness? Yes. Like it's the devil? It is the devil. What closet are you in? My closet. The small one where you keep your toiletries, or the big one where you keep all your clothes? If I was forced to envision this, I needed it to be accurate. The walk-in, think I should go in the small one? I've never rebuked vaginal dryness, I said, moving on to the onion, so I have no idea. I suppose the most important thing is that you feel comfortable. Well, whatever. It's not a closet anyway. It's a war room. I'm releasing strongholds. She began to portion out flour for our bread recipe. I drew within myself pensive, trying to ingest what my sister was telling me. She's an incredibly funny woman, but she wasn't laughing. Did you want to start the show with how to make the buns, or what were you thinking? She asked. I'm sorry, wait. I wasn't ready to just move on to bun baking. So when you're in the closet, are you shouting out loud, I rebuke vaginal dryness in the name of Jesus? Or what's actually happening? I need to understand. I'm not sure how I can make this more clear, but yes, among a few other things, I declare God's best over my life and the life of my family, including my health. I pray for my kids and their lives, their health. Can they hear you rebuking vaginal dryness in your closet? I don't know, and I don't care. I have to admit her resolve and total lack of embarrassment over the whole thing was inspiring. Okay, I'll leave that. I'll leave that there. But I will say with Catherine, I will say with this Catherine O'Hara, and I do want to share this. You know, a lot of my stories tend to have a deeper meaning, right? And so I'm really making fun of aging and my forehead and how I have to go to Sephora and ask a 19-year-old if they have like wall spackle for this, you know, and they're like, oh, I mean, we can try, and none of it works. And there's a real kind of like, there is something deeper going on here. And aging and the relationship that we have with our body, and then the relationship that we have with the body that's changing. And I found myself starting to get obsessed with the idea of running. There's another chapter where I run a half marathon. I'm really not much of, I do not have a natural runner's body. I have more of like a quilter's body, someone who likes to just relax. You know, I mean, I don't have any type of thing about me. I used to play competitive tennis, but that was it. And even then, I just used power to get me through. Like, don't make me run. I'm just going to rip it at you so that I don't have to run. I mean, I'm not much of a runner, but I got obsessed with it. And I couldn't quite figure out why I couldn't stop thinking about running, and why I was looking up like dogs, you know, maybe getting another dog to run with, because I have an English bulldog, totally worthless. He couldn't, if there was an apocalypse, we'd die because of him. He'd just be so, he'd not help us at all. It would be the worst. So I really started to get kind of obsessed with running, and I was trying to figure out why. And I go for this jog for the first time, and it was hilariously spiritual. Like, this doe comes out onto the path, and I'm running. Okay, every part of my body is like jiggling in wrong frequencies, you know what I mean, which is very disconcerting. And I'm running, and it's awkward, and this doe comes out in the path, and I start to choke up. It's also scary. If you're that close to a deer, you're not quite sure, you know, they could like maybe come at you, you know, you don't know what it's going to do, but I was like, you know, boop, 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 you know, trying to get it to go away. But I sort of have this kind of spiritual like thing with this doe, and it just stares at me in the middle of the path for probably a solid 10 seconds. And then she just leaps off into the forest. I think somebody says hi to me, and that makes me emotional. And I'm like, my gosh, what is my deal? So I'm running, and I run into the doe, And I'm trying to figure out what my deal is. And I say, my feet hit the ground, tap, tap, tap. My breath moving in unison, huff, huff, huff. And as I emerged from the forested part of the trail back into the sunlight, I finally understood. My body wants my respect. Not some corny meme, not some platitude or body positivity cliche. My body wanted, deserved, and was now demanding my respect. It was turning 40. It's grown now. No more childish petty games. Enough is enough. Treat me right. I don't think I've ever loved my body, respected my body, or even thanked my body. In fact, I've disrespected it my entire life. And the saddest part is that my body is a miracle. My eyes are a miracle. My hands, my feet, my heart, it pumps every single second so I can pursue a joyful life. It works tirelessly so my spirit can live on earth, have a family, have fun. It seals my paper cuts. It fights the flu. It swells to protect an injury. Here I've neglected it, and still it takes care of me. Yet all I see are laugh lines, crepey knees, hot dogs on my forehead. All I see is one curly hair on my chin and ignore the abundance of curly hair it creates for me on my head. My body wants my respect, to take care of it, to show it love, to be thankful for all it can do, to exercise, to give it sun, and in my specific case, to run. And the only explanation I can figure out, the reason I felt a constant need to cry, is that I was ready to make it right, running in the midst of answered prayer. Sorry. I'm being way too corny, aren't I? I asked my mom on the drive home. Am I over spiritualizing this? A little too woo woo? Maybe I'm just tired and worn out, over dramatizing the whole thing. Oh no, she said, it sounds about right to me. I want to treat myself well, and then more than anything, Mom, I want to be content. I turned into my neighborhood. I want my 40s to be my best decade yet. It was for me, she said, sipping her tea. I felt my most beautiful in my 40s. It was when I fully came alive. But my 50s were incredible too. I loved my 60s. My 70s, I want to fill with travel. My hip is bothering me a little now, but I'm working on it. I can remember my mom in her 40s. It was when I was 10 to 19 years old. It feels like it was just a week ago, and I don't remember her any different than she is now. My beautiful Sicilian mother wearing her white boat neck shirts, black crop slacks, her lovely olive skin. Talk about ruining a moment with a frog in your throat. Classic. Her lovely olive skin, big brown eyes, a little red mole on her cheekbone. Mom has never worn a lot of makeup. She doesn't have to. I was so proud when she'd come around, when my friends would visit after school, when she'd take me to lunch in college and I'd introduce her to all my new friends. I came from that woman. I am a part of that woman. I am that woman. Catherine O'Hara, Meg Ryan, my mother, and me, never stopping, going, going, going. So, listen. We're all getting thrown into aging. We're all getting thrown into new decades.
Yeah.
And you can't, embrace it for the beauty that it has rather than despising it. I think that's the only real kind of key to joy there. But I have so many other stories. I kind of went a little long. I've got my marathon story where I run a marathon, which is ridiculous. So many hilarious things in here. But I guess you're going to have to read it to get those hilarious stories.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're going to have to buy the book and read it for yourself to get
That's right.
the rest of those funny stories, or wait maybe for Anna's upcoming comedy special. Hearing them somewhere soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a few questions just about like the themes of the book and kind of the book itself, the stories in the book. And then I always like to ask our authors that we have kind of about their journey, because we have a lot of writers in our audience, a lot of people who want to find out kind of about how you became published and how that all worked. But first about the book, I loved that the first essay is called Only God is Perfect, because it struck me that much of the theme of not being ready has to do with, I don't know if this is just like something that a lot of women suffer from, or even people, where it's the notion of perfectionism, right? And you can't can't be ready for anything unless you're going to do it perfect. You cannot do any of the things. So unless you're
Right.
going to be like a perfect mother who gets all the exact correct organic baby food and has a pram and sews her own
Yeah.
clothes from a loom, you cannot be a mother. And I wondered if that was something that you thought about, kind of, and at what point you're just like, okay, I give up. I'm not going to be perfect and I'm going to have to do it anyway. I'm going to have to figure out how to live.
You know, we cannot short circuit experience as much as we want to. And experience, more often than not, is when you're getting thrust into something that you don't feel ready for. And there's so many decisions that we make because we just feel like, well, once I have enough money, once I'm ready, once I've practiced enough, once I've done this, once I've done that, but nothing really beats being in it. You cannot tell a woman what it's like to have an infant. You can, I mean, she can read all the books and you can scare her to death, but she's not going to have a clue until she's doing it. And I feel like that is the case for me. I mean, I can practice and prepare myself for a marathon, but you really don't know what it's like until you're there. And I didn't even do a full. I did a half. Okay. And I tell you, I thought I was going to die twice. And so these things in life are just whenever you're not ready. So I just had my launch party and I decided for the first time, I usually do readings. I actually have a talk, and if you'd ever want to invite me back, I'd love to just chat with your writers because I have a good talk about surviving the liminal space, which is that space between a dream and a dream being realized, that period of uncertainty and not knowing what you're doing, and how most of us will run back to our comfort zones because that place is so miserable. And oh crap, I forgot where I was going. I got thrown off on that point. Where was I headed? What was I saying?
That sounds amazing. About you can't really, you have to be in it. You can't really know until you're in it.
Right. Oh, so I just had this launch party and it was the first time I was going to try, actually, instead of doing a reading, I was going to do kind of like a stand-up routine. And I got deathly sick a week beforehand. So all of that week that I cut out to prepare, I was literally sick with my children. I mean, we were just like, with high fevers and just deathly ill. And I still, leading up to the event, was extremely fatigued. I mean, I would make my kids breakfast and then I'd have to go take a nap. And so I was like, I am not ready to perform. And I thought about ways I couldn't cancel it because the event was so huge. But I was like, maybe I'll just sit there and do a reading, or maybe I was trying to think of all of these things. I was like, nope, you're never ready for anything. Plan it, do the best you can to kind of put notes and to be ready for it. And then just show up and just trust adrenaline's going to get you through. And I crushed. I don't say that to brag. I just say that we get so afraid and then we back out of things because we just think we're not ready yet for it yet.
Yeah.
But the worst thing that was going to happen, and listen, I'm a writer, and so I get that writers get this advantage. Worst case scenario, I bomb, and now I have a hilarious chapter for book 3. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's like worst case.
Everything is material.
So everything is material. And I think that worst case scenario, you've got a great story. You have something to learn from. You have something to use. Nothing really goes to waste. And there's a certain time where you think like, if I show up to this thing and if I show up to a book signing and nobody is there, go around, grab the mic of the bookstore and just start reading your book. Everything is an experience that adds to your story. And the more crazy it is, the harder it is, the better the story. And we don't want to hear about wildly successful people that everything they touch turns to gold. Boring. I mean, I want to hear about the struggle. I want to hear about the flops. I want to hear and how you handled it, and how you overcame it. And so people want to know that about us too. We're actively living the stories of our lives right now, and the stories that we pass down to our kids. And when these things are precious, and in the moment we want to run from them, but they really are the best stories that we have.
So true. Oh, that's just that's so beautiful. It's so accurate. It's so true. And yet I feel like probably many of us can relate to just like encountering that feeling again and again, the feeling of wanting to and just having to kind of make that decision every time, even as you're telling the story about your launch. It's like, okay, you've done so many things, you've written 2 books, you have all essays about all the things you weren't ready for, and still you had to, you know, come to that event and sort of say, okay, I'm not ready for this either, but I've exercised my muscle and I can do it not ready.
Exactly. Yep.
So on sort of a different note, the book, it's so funny, it's so humorous, but a lot of the subjects are really serious. There's marriage, parenting, there's miscarriage, there's death and grief, and you know, the scary anecdote which you told our audience a little bit about, when your mom got run over and pushed you out of the way. There's a lot of really intense subject matter. What do you think about kind of the use of humor and how you used humor to kind of like process those intense, serious subjects?
I think that I'm naturally have a tendency to write more seriously, which surprises a lot of people. But I recognize the gift of humor and what it does for people. And of course, I love making people laugh. And I think that writing humor is actually far more difficult. And so it's kind of like an exercise in making me a better writer. But really, when it comes down to it, I could have written a book. And honestly, I think when my agent picked me up, I think my agent really thought that I was going to be this funny mom blogger type. And I was like, that's not who I am. I really feel I don't even consider myself a blogger. I really consider myself to be an actual writer writing about real life. And real life is not always a laugh a minute. So, and I kind of told them, I was like, if you guys are expecting this kind of book from me, and my editor, God bless her, Jenny Baumgartner, she was amazing. She's like, I want you to write whatever you feel like you want to write, because if I force you to write on a particular thing, it's just not going to be very good. So there was this line that I remember David Sedaris said, and I love David Sedaris. Is one of my favorite writers. He writes in my genre, which is narrative nonfiction, kind of writing a collection of essays. And he said something really profound once. And he said that when he did a lot of his first books that were just funny, they were just outrageous essays and skits. At the end of the book signing, he would ask people if they had a good time. They'd be like, oh my gosh, I laughed all the way through. And he'd ask, well, what was your favorite part? And nobody could remember. And it wasn't until he started to write about deeper, more serious parts of his life, his mother's late in life alcoholism, things that were really serious, big moments of his life that were really serious and heartbreaking in a lot of ways, that the audience began to remember and to connect. And so I think that if I make you laugh, I think laughter and giving someone a really big belly laugh gives people hope. But if you also touch them on a deeper level, if you then you're now making that human connection of we're the same. I have been through this. I have experienced through this. I have walked through this. There is no difference between us. Now we've got community. Now we've got a relationship. And then people really begin to remember my book because I have evoked an emotion from them, often one that they're not expecting. And I don't do it to be tricky. I just do it because I want my books to have the greatest impact on the reader and to really make a difference in their lives if I can.
Yeah, so true. It produces that resonance, like talking about those things. And I really feel it even with some of the lighter things. I felt the resonance, like the essay that you have, sort of closer to the beginning, Heefy-Jeebies.
Yes, yeah.
Which is about death and grief and kind of about the self-awareness and sort of solipsism that we, when we're not the person who's aggrieved, often have surrounding doing the right thing, saying the right thing. How do we caretake other people in the best way? And it was sort of a more, I mean, there's grief and there's sadness in that essay, but I felt so connected to just like that impulse to get it right and not being the person who knows the right answer, but having to find a way to sort of center the other people and do what you can for them and not make it about you and your insecurity. I you've done just a really beautiful job with this book of doing that, of really creating resonance and also creating the laughs. Yeah.
Heebie-Jeebies was my editor's favorite chapter. And I think a lot of people can connect with that one. And it's about my uncle. My cousin calls me and to tell me that my uncle is going back to their house for at-home hospice care. And I didn't even know he was dying. And I have a Swedish side to me, and I have the Swedish side. Swedes can be, they're not cold. My dad is not a cold man, but they don't show, at least stereotypically, generally, a lot of emotion. And emotion is awkward for them, and they'll avoid it. And so that was the Swedish side. That was my dad's side. And I have a lot of that in me. But I also have my mom's Sicilian side that is trying to be loving and knowing that I need to do the right thing. And so it really is, what do you say to people? What do I say to my cousin? Our dads look a lot alike. My dad is healthy and alive and hers is dead. And to have to still stand there, I mean, it's so easy to just want to kind of run away from that awkwardness or that emotion or that inability to say the right thing or do the right thing. When I'm nervous, I joke way too much. I mean, it's almost like I just back to back to back to back nervous jokes, right? And that can be inappropriate. And I think a lot of us go through that. And the one part where I go to bring food, but then I start to doubt it. Number one, it was pricey. Okay, I made them a whole Easter dinner, but you start to question it, like the ham's $30. And so you start to think to yourself, if I show up with the ham, what if they're all sitting there eating pizza? You know what I mean? So you get selfish. What if I put all of this time into it and they don't even like the food? You go through the gamut of human emotions of trying to figure out, and then that you're walking into this grief. And are you going to be enough? Are you going to say the right thing? And every part of you just wants to not do it. And so anyway, it is a story of me and my mom showing up, because it was over Easter weekend is when he came home, showing up with a bunch of food, trying to figure out, Googling how to do that. Like, do I ask? Because then when do you show up? What if nobody's there? You've got all of this food that you just made. It's still hot. Nobody's there. You know what I mean? And you have all these are real questions.
They
And so,
are. It's a real thing.
yes.
I was like, I learned something from this essay too, about when your friend says, "Oh yes, I know exactly what you're supposed to do."
Yeah, you do. So yeah, you're not, just so anybody's watching, don't ask them, can I bring you food, or call me if you need anything. They're not going to. They're in grief. They're suffering. They're not, you've given them work to do. So really what you're supposed to do is just say, I'm coming over at noon with food. And then if they really don't want you to, then they'll tell you. But most of the time they're like, "Oh, thank you," and then you go from there. You don't give them a choice, which was new to me. I had to find out. I had to look it up. I didn't know.
Me either. So yeah, I think a lot of us are in that situation. So
That's
it's
right.
a really beautiful essay. We have a few minutes left, so I want to shift gears a bit and then get to a question from the audience. But I just want to ask you about your journey. So you said you always kind of wanted to be a writer. You see yourself as sort of a narrative nonfiction writer. What did it look like for you kind of coming, and how has that been? Because you have two books, in really quick succession. So has it been really busy, or has it been exciting to kind of and move from the liminal space to, I don't know, the next frontier?
Yeah. What's really funny is that especially when the second book came out, everybody's like, it's launch day tomorrow. Are you so excited? And I'm like, no. Anne Lamott says in Bird by Bird, which is one of the best books for writers, I recommend it to anybody who wants to even think about writing. She says in there that the launch week of a book is about the worst life has to offer. And I have to say that it's true, because you're scared. You don't know if people are going to buy the book. You're worried that it's going to flop. Writers get an advance. You're terrified that you're not going to sell out your advance. Most of us don't. Actually, I think 95% of us don't. You want to do well. You want people, because when you create something, I think we were all made to create. And people think that being creative means you write or paint or write poems. We're all creating something. And so it matters to us, even if it's just a dinner for a friend. You're like watching them like, what do you think about what you think about that salmon? Put a little maple syrup on that. You like it, right? I mean, because when we create something for someone, it matters to us and we want other people to love it and enjoy it too. And so the book experience, it's hard on writers to do the marketing piece. So yeah, it's exciting, but a lot of the Yvonne Orji, she's the one hilarious actress in Insecure. I was blessed enough to be able to kind of have a little back and forth with her, and she was like, please, 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 just do whatever you can to enjoy this week. That didn't happen. I didn't enjoy it. It was terrible, but it's good advice. And so, yeah, when I was a little girl, I was in this sixth grade, and my teacher said we tasked us with writing a short story. And it was the very first time I remember actually coming alive in school and really being like, oh my gosh, I took it so seriously. I wrote my heart out. And a couple days after we had handed in our short stories, my teacher, she brought me up to her desk and she said, Anne, I just wanted to tell you that this is very, very good. And that was it. That was it. I went home, kicked the door in. I was like, family, I'm going to be a published author. So just so you know. Yeah. And I remember my mom was at the kitchen sink and she kind of turns around. She's at the sink doing something. She goes, you are, babe? And when she said that, I started to get my first inklings of doubt. Like, I'm not ready for this, really. Like, what am I saying? This is crazy. And I go, well, I bet everybody says that, though. And my mom she kind of turned off the sink. She turns around and she goes, no, honey, I don't think hardly anybody thinks that. And so that was it for me. I believed that I was going to be a writer all the way up until then. Life happens though. And so I wrote for my school newspaper. And when I went to college, when it was time to get into like English, I was afraid that if I didn't become a published author, if I had an English degree, I'd have to teach. And at the time, I did not want to become a teacher. So I went into advertising. Then after that, I went and worked in advertising. Had a midlife crisis. I was like, what is this? I mean, I thought I was going to be like in New York with like a power suit, like big, huge campaigns for Coca-Cola.
That's
I was writing
what I see when I think advertising. That's what I see.
No, it's me in a cubicle writing copy for lawnmowers. It was horrible. And so I actually went to, after that, I had been an RA. And so being an RA, a resident assistant at college, was a really wonderful experience for me. And so I thought I'd just hit the reset and apply to become the boss of the RAs. And so I got a job at CSU Chico in Chico, California. I lived and I worked on campus. I got my master's degree out there. And then I pivoted I thought I was going to become a psychologist. I was enrolling to get my PhD. I met and married my husband out there. And I remember the director, all of my cohort had come to watch me defend my thesis. And at the end of it, after I defended my thesis, my director comes up to me and he says, have you ever just thought about being a comedian? And I was so offended. I mean, I hadn't slept in 2 weeks. I had worked my butt off for this thing. My thesis got selected. Everything went beautifully. And I'm like, you want me to go down to Joe's for open mic night? But when he said that, I had this like epiphany that I had strayed away from that calling. And that was when blogs were really hot back then and people were starting to create their own personal blogs. And so I asked my husband, I said, would it be okay with you if I take a pause on pursuing my PhD and just go for writing? And so thank God that the fart story hit 3 months after, because I really thought the fart story, when that hit, that was it. I was like, wow, didn't take me long at all. I'm good. I'm better than I thought I was. I mean, it took me 3 months. Some of you have been writing for years. I feel sorry for you. If you need advice, call me. Really though, nothing happened. After it blew up and I got all of that crazy attention for a few months, nothing happened. And so I had to learn how to become a writer, and I had to write every single day, sometimes to nobody. And I had some successes in there, but it was about a decade of showing up every day to the things I loved. And I was like, fly, beautiful piece of work, change the world. And then, you get one like, and it's my Aunt Beth, it's like, great. I had to go through that. And I am so glad that I did not get the book deal when the fart story first went viral. I wasn't ready. I wasn't a very good writer. I think the first book I would have written wouldn't have been quite good enough. I needed that time to hone my craft. And we don't want to, we want to skip ahead. But nothing trumps experience. And I needed that time to grow.
Oh, that's such a wonderful, nothing trumps experience. That's a wonderful kind of message to end the hour on. The question I'll leave you with is there going to be book 3? Are ideas for book 3 germinating?
Yes, I've actually started to work book 3,
Okay.
and I'm going to write a lot about this experience, and it's going to probably be a lot about imposter syndrome. I've got some hilarious stories of where I'm supposed to be like the star and like nobody knows who I am. You know, I've got a lot of like those really cringy but hilarious stories to tell. And I think that it comes at a perfect time because I think that there's something about social media and that the culture that we kind of live in where imposter syndrome is at an all-time high. And it is just such a relatable thing where we all feel like not only are we not ready for it, but now we stepped into it and we feel like frauds. Or like, what am I doing here? I don't have nothing to say, you know. And so
Definitely.
it's a part of that human experience that we all relate to. And so if I can help people kind of have some insight into themselves by making fun of myself, I'm here for it. And so
Amazing. Well, that sounds awesome. We are going to look forward to that book from you, and we are all going to come out and get this book and read
yay.
all those stories that Anna didn't get a chance to share with us today. Anna, thank you so much for being here. It was really an honor to have you. Everybody, I want to remind you that this interview will live here at this link, crowdcast.io/e/Anna Lynn Thomas, if you want to share it with friends or people who couldn't make it out tonight. And it will also live on our Hub City YouTube page. So you can check it out there as well and share it with people there. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And everybody, we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much. And one last thing, you guys, I'm testing out chapters for my third book at annalynnthomas.substack.com. So subscribe to my newsletter and you get all of my latest hilarious writings. You'll be the first to get it. So go check that out.
Amazing. We'll make sure we add that link into our YouTube video when we share it. Awesome.
Yay. Thank you guys.
Thank you.